Hey everyone, today we wanted to give you an overview of the Universal DevOps Framework. Before we jump in, we just want to make sure come and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'd love for you to join us on this journey through DevOps. So let's jump in. So what we wanted to do today is kind of walk through an overview of what is the Universal DevOps Framework. What are some of the core component pieces? And what we're going to do is we're going to lay these out over time. And these are kind of the foundational pieces or pillars of what's created as part of this framework. So again, a lot of people say or know or kind of think what DevOps is. And what we're going to do is walk through a lot of these core areas. And today is just sort of an overview, but over time what we're going to do is dive deeper into each of these specific areas. So let's kind of jump in. So the first one is really foundational in terms of the platform. So it's really easy to set up platforms, spin up the environments, and start to manage those in a very manual way. Whenever we walk into organizations, we see that all the time where it's very manual, how permissions are applied, policies are kind of all over the place a little bit, and you see some repositories that have different policies, or you go and you see collection admins, there's a whole list of people who have them. So it's kind of all over the place. So what Platform as Code really does is we utilize some of the out-of-box providers that Microsoft has for Azure DevOps and for GitHub, and the entire platform is managed through Terraform. So we have separate workspaces which are all completely managed by products. So it allows you just to be able to organize all of your information within the DevOps platform as products or value streams, and then have that completely managed through code inside of Terraform. So all of that syncing with VS Code, all of that syncing back right into the actual platforms itself, even to the point of how you're managing Terraform, you can use Terraform as well. So this just really eliminates a lot of the manual work that happens as part of managing those platforms, and it just gives you one single place to do this, and then it becomes self-documenting so that you know exactly how this is managed and all of those policies are in one place. A second thing when it comes to platform is really talking about the security. So again, it's very easy to set up a platform and install it exactly how it looks, but how does that get hardened? How does that get locked down? So if we have all the organization source code and a lot of the deployment pipelines coming out of one platform, it better be locked down. So what we do is we can implement zero trust principles, so just-in-time access, just enough access for our administrators as part of both platforms, ADO and for GitHub. And then the whole process of how access is granted is streamlined and it's standardized across repos, across pipelines, across work, across packages. All of that is in a consistent and standard way, and also connected into Entra ID. Additionally, when we have our pipelines, all of those are utilizing credentials or service principals, hopefully, or some sort of way that's authenticating. So what we're able to do as well is automate that entire process so that you're not manually copying credentials, creating these credentials. None of that gets managed manually. All of that is done in an automated way, all to manage the entire security of the platform. This platform is super vital to the business, so it has to be treated that way, especially with how it's secure and how it's locked down. Then when we get into work management, we go into organizations all the time and we see how is it that you manage work. And sometimes we see these across different projects. We see people kind of working in different silos. Some are working in Scrum, some are working in Kanban. And what we really do when it comes to work management is how can we deliver value to customers faster? Everything comes down to delivering a value. We don't put a lot of these pieces in place just because we want to. Is how does that ultimately tie back to value to the business? Again, that's core to the whole DevOps principle, is continuously delivering value. So when it comes to how we manage our work, that has to be in the same format too. So what we do is when we see work, there's a very specific way to do that where we can create at the top layer products or value streams and teams are able to relate their work and work within their team at the same time aligning to whatever the priorities in the business are. So there's a whole concept of alignment versus autonomy. And what we do is we help organizations come in and show them how exactly that taxonomy looks like and how you can manage all that work into one place. And then as you have different teams who are working together, they also have the same format, the same style. So again, it's alignment at the top level in terms of product value streams, but it's autonomous in terms of how teams work, whatever works for the team. Again, every team's a little bit different, how they work, how they get their things done. So there's a balance. There's a balance between those, and we can walk through what that looks like. Then we have code management. So from a code management perspective, this is really how do we have standard automated security checks for managing our code. We want a consistent and streamlined process of how code gets checked in and managed, but then also how that code is protected. So many times we see there's some repos that have policies on them, some don't, or we see some have policies and it requires a pull request on that policy, but the reviewer, the person who checked in the code can also be the reviewer at the same time. So peer reviews are really powerful. They allow opportunities for even junior developers to learn from seniors, and it just allows that ability to peer review. And especially when it comes to any industries that are doing SOX regulations, this is just another check that you can have to be doing that peer review across what code is actually being checked in. GitHub has some really exciting features that are coming in where AI-powered automated checks can be added. So you can actually have GitHub Copilot doing the peer reviews for you, providing feedback for you, because that's what a lot of times people say is, I don't have time to do these peer reviews. And that's where a lot of the power of AI, where it can kind of take a look, you can tell it in natural language exactly what you want it to be looking for, and it can actually become part of your peer review process. It's really cool. So in addition to that is we also have everything that is part of advanced security. So Microsoft's advanced security platform, whether that's GAS in GitHub or GASDO as part of Azure DevOps, is not only the policy and processes around checking in code, but then also how we're scanning those. All of the code scanning that we can do, validating dependencies and the Dependabot features, and then also secret scanning and blocking secrets from ever even entering the code repository. So that is super critical to protecting that core piece of the code. The next pieces are all around the pipeline framework, and you'll see that there's actually 3 separate modules or pillars around pipelines, because when we think about DevOps, this is where a lot of people their brain goes, as they say, well, DevOps is CI/CD, or it's just how do I securely deploy all the things, and that is important, that is very true. But what we have is there's so many different ways to automate pipelines, and there's so many different ways where you don't want to do that. Because the pipeline framework is so powerful, at the same time, it's something that you have to be very cautious of. With great power is great responsibility. So what the pipeline framework really does, it's a holistic framework from start to finish, which really walks through the architecture, how we break up different code repos and pipeline extensions, where developers, again, have the autonomy to go create what they need to, but there's also alignment in terms of security and best practices and management of some of those core component pieces. We don't want anyone, whether that's intentional or malicious, to be able to use a pipeline or use a pipeline that has access to a credential or a principal that then can alter an environment that we don't want them to. So how do we protect those, and then how do we automate things to make the best out of that whole architecture? So there's a whole way to do that, how we manage approvals, how we manage our credentials, how we manage those extensions, how do we balance that alignment and autonomy, and the pipeline framework is completely comprehensive in how it manages all that stuff from start to finish. And then in addition to that, kind of the core of what makes deployments happen is the pipeline task framework. So really what this is, it's a powerful, flexible framework where we can essentially plug it into the pipeline framework and automate just about anything that you're looking to automate, whether that's Oracle databases, SQL databases, SSIS, any sort of capability where you can touch a REST API, you can touch an SDK, anything that can be managed programmatically. So this is a super powerful framework. The tasks themselves become packaged and versioned, being now that task framework allows you to automate against so many different tools that organizations use on a daily basis. So a lot of times when we see what people do in their task framework is we'll see PowerShell or Bash code written directly inside their pipelines. You don't want to do that because that's not managed, it's not packaged, it's not versioned. You make one change, it impacts everybody else. So what this pipeline task framework does is it allows you to put a lot of that standard and process around the tasks themselves, and you can then deploy those just like anything else you do. Then the third part of the pipeline task framework is the agent framework. So of course what makes a lot of this possible are the agents that they run on. So Microsoft and GitHub, they have their own cloud agents, and if you're deploying to cloud and those fit your needs, that's great. But a lot of times what we see in organizations is they use self-hosted agents because that just allows you to manage your own machines. It allows you to install all the supporting software that you need, and it just makes it a lot easier. Now there's a lot of benefits that Microsoft gives you because it has agents that are ephemeral. It means that they can spin up and tear down. And from a security perspective, that's wonderful. So a lot of times when we see how organizations do their agent framework, we'll see that these pipeline agents are running as credentialed and elevated service accounts, which you don't want to do. Sometimes we see that there are multiple static agents, which is also a security concern, as you can then have cross-agent poisoning, where if I can plant something on an agent, then I can have, when other pipelines run, I can actually take advantage of what's on there. So again, going back to the DevOps Zero Trust, this is just another framework that we can use because that environment is so critical. The whole pipeline framework is super powerful, but we also have to make sure that we're giving autonomy to our developers to work and get what they need done, but at the same time, it has to be something that's being protected and secured. And then the last part of, or one of the other parts of the Universal DevOps framework is then industry-specific solutions. As we've worked with a lot of different industries that have a lot of common tools and processes and applications and deployments that they do, what we've started to gather is a whole library of different industry-specific solutions around the technology space, utility, education, banking, and others. So this is just another way that the framework can be used and have specific solutions that target various industries or specific platforms or solutions, and they can get plugged directly into the framework. So what's going to happen is over time, what we're going to do is start to post information about these specific areas and kind of dive into them deeper. And then what we're going to do is kind of bundle a lot into skill tracks, into very specific ways of how you can take this, implement it into your organization, and learn from it. So we're really glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us in this. Again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, we'd love for you to join us on this journey, and would love to hear your comments. As you're implementing DevOps, you're using other tools, or you're using Azure DevOps and GitHub, we'd love to hear some of the other ways that you use this or use the platform as well. So until next time, thanks for joining.